When Yasmin madam joins, then we can have her session as a chief guest.
Okay.
Is it fine, sir?
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine, fine. So good morning to all the participants. Good morning to Jaurji. Sir is always ready at one call to be part of NAAC, any process, whether it's pertaining to assessment accreditation process or whether it's pertaining to any webinar. So we are thankful to you for accepting our invitation and to be a part of this webinar. We are
Okay.
also thankful to all the participants also who have joined. We know that there are a lot of connectivity issues out there. To begin with the program, I request Dr. Pratibha Singh, Madam, Deputy Advisor, to please welcome the participants, the panelists, and give a gist about today's webinar. Pratibha, Madam, please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shyam. Um, on behalf of NAAC family and on my personal behalf and on behalf of our director, Professor S.C. Sharma ji, I welcome you today for the webinar session, which is planned for the National Education Policy. And the webinar is aimed towards bringing the awareness about these various themes related to national education policy. As you know that we are going to implement the national education policy, and already we are witnessing various implementation aspects related to the national education policies. The states have started adopting the policy and started taking various initiatives because the education is a concurrent subject. The central government has not notified this policy on 29th of July 2020, and we are just on the our honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has launched the Academic Bank of Credit also in the month of July 2021. So a lot of changes are going to occur when we are trying to implement and trying to drive our educational systems towards the implementation aspects. So we as a stakeholders have to see how and what is achievable for our own context, and state-wise policies need to be modified in what way that has to be discussed and deliberated between the stakeholders and between the academics out there. So with this agenda, we have planned a series of webinars, and these webinars are planned for the state-wise colleges and institutions. So in this webinar, we are going to have two presentations. Our chief guest and the keynote speaker will be delivering on the various 6 themes of the national education policy, namely the skill enhancement, academic bank of credit, multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach, outcome-based education, and online and distance mode of education, and integration of Indian knowledge systems. So all those things we will be discussing, and maybe at the end of the program, we will be having the interaction between the stakeholders and the colleges, wherein you can place your queries and concerns related to the implementation aspect of national education policy. So with these words, I welcome you once again and welcome the chief guest and the keynote speaker, Dr. Ahmed and Ms. Yasmin, for sparing their valuable time to be a part of this particular webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir. And we once again welcome you all for this particular webinar. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Shyam Singh Inda. You can take ahead.
Uh, Thank you, Madam. Before inviting Dr. Jawar Ahmed Chatterjee, sir is already a renowned person in the valley, Jammu and Kashmir also, but I'll take this opportunity, I take permission from you to just speak a few words about you, sir.
You can,
As
you
you
can
know,
please. Please go ahead, sir.
sir is a former director of Collegiate Education, Department of Higher Education, Jammu and Kashmir. All the participants and who have joined from different government colleges and institutions, they already know him. He has been one of the notable personalities in the Jammu and Kashmir to bring out a lot of administrative changes, the academic changes in the valleys also. We also remember that Sir has taken very keen active interest to bring the colleges to come forward for NAAC assessment and accreditation process, where he has taken a lot of initiatives, where he has conducted a lot of hand-holding exercises also. We were personally a part also, and we were lucky enough to have the deliberation with Sir, and we saw the keen active interest which he wants the colleges to come forward for assessment and accreditation process. He has been monumental in bringing out the policy changes also in the administrative reforms, academic reforms, and most important, he has been ambassador for NAAC. At one shot, at any given of time, whenever we contact him or whenever we need any sort of help, without any sort of delay, is ready to accept it. So we are indeed grateful to you to be part of this webinar, and we are also rest assured that in future also we can look forward for your kind cooperation, your wisdom, knowledge in carrying forward the NAAC assessment and accreditation process and for the benefit of the stakeholders all over the country. So now I take this privilege to kindly invite you and please deliver your key sessions on this National Education Policy 2020 for the benefit of the participants and the panelists. Professor Zohar Ahmed Chatterjee, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sham, Dr. Pratibha, and particularly the director of the NAAC, Professor Sharma Saab, for having taken keen interest in conducting this webinar, not only for the state of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, but for the entire country as a whole on different dates. This was something which was needed, and I am sure that towards the quality education in the country, NAC has been very pivotal and it has been working and discharging the responsibility towards the significant area of improvement in the quality of higher education. To just inform Dr. Sham, Madam Yasmin is online, but unfortunately she is not in a position to unmute. And therefore, she suggested me to carry out this message to you that she will be joining as and when she is in a position to connect to you through unmuting his or her laptop. As all of us know that new education policy 2020 has been actually brought about and promulgated by Government of India during 2020. And it is definitely on the basis of the rigorous efforts that have taken place throughout the country during a period of 2.5 years. We understand and we know that people at the grassroots level even were involved in offering their suggestions as and when they were asked for in order to bring about a viable national education policy 2020. So everybody in the country is involved in actually designing the National Education Policy 2020. And it's really, really a policy which is encompassing all the aspects of education, not only the higher education, starting from the school education, the higher education, technical education, and all sorts of the institutions of eminence in the country, national level institutions. And it has to be studied in the light of having the linkages. If you study the higher education, you have to have backward linkage and forward linkage also to consider. You cannot ignore the school education system. As important is the higher education system as you have the school education system. I don't know what efforts have been undertaken at the national level or in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh in respect of school education, that we don't know. But insofar as higher education is concerned, our Department of Higher Education has worked in a very proactive manner. The department during September 2021 only, September 2020 in fact, they constituted a task force consisting of prominent academics of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh to just offer their suggestions as to how best we shall be in a position to implement various provisions that are associated, that are incorporated in National Education Policy 2020. And we have had several sessions of that task force. I, being the member of the task force at the Union Territory level, we conducted several sessions to talk about and discuss various aspects of NEP 2020. And it's also great to know that in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, the task force has been actually categorized into different segments. We have categorized it. and assigned the responsibility of conducting great deal of activity and great deal of exercise in respect of those specialistic and specific aspects of NEP 2020. Our task force, our subgroup was given the responsibility of suggesting the measures in respect of making the structural changes in the higher education system in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. We met several times. We discussed all the areas where the structural changes are required to be undertaken to be incorporated. And we have come out with a draft that has been submitted to the government for the purpose of consideration. And that draft is on the basis of the main provisions as are contained in NEP 2020. We actually know that the objective and mission of the NEP 2020 is that we are in a position to create and churn out valuable human beings from our institutions. In the past, it has been suggested that, and it's been observed, that you are producing the graduates, n number of graduates, n number of postgraduates from your colleges and the universities. And however, we find and we observe on the basis of the study that has been conducted at the national level that only 2% or not more than 2% of those graduating from the institutions of higher education, whether it be the colleges or it be the universities, are employable. 98% are not employable in the eyes of the market, in the eyes of the contemporary situation that is prevalent in the market. We understand that you are actually producing the students from your educational system, particularly the higher education system, not only for the public system, but for the private system, what you call the private corporate organizations, which has now become a fact of the situation. Your government structure, public system is already shrunk. We don't have much of the opportunities in the public system. Wherever the opportunities now are available, abundant opportunities are now available, but those opportunities are available in the corporate sector, which is a reality now under the contemporary situation, contemporary conditions. So we have to produce the students from our institutions, higher educational institutions, colleges and the universities, those who can find out their opportunities in the corporate organizations. And unfortunate as it is, the corporate organizations claim that the graduates and the postgraduates that you produce from your institutions, those people are not employable because those people do not have that level of skills, set of skills as are required by their corporate organizations to discharge various responsibilities. Therefore, this has actually given a boost, a sort of challenge to the higher education system in the country. But we don't only consider and we don't only recognize that we have to produce the graduates and postgraduates from the system. We have to produce valuable graduates and valuable postgraduates, which is ultimately the mission and objective of the NEP. Don't consider only the numbers, which is very important for the educational setting. What is important is that number, the number of the candidates, number of the graduates and postgraduates that you are churning out of these institutions, is that number employable in the light of the contemporary situations or not? This is something which is very important and which is actually a thrust of NEP 2020, that you have to produce competent human beings, creative human beings, efficient human beings, those who can take up various assignments and various responsibilities in the competitive market environment, which is a thrust, which is basically a challenge for the higher education system across the country. And therefore, to meet this challenge, I welcome Professor Yasmin ji also. She has also now joined. So this, to meet this challenge, we have to undergo various structural changes in the higher education in the country. We have to undergo various structural changes. And those structural changes can be clubbed into the academic changes, academic restructuring of the institutions, There might be the infrastructural restructuring, organizational restructuring, human resource restructuring. All these restructuring is the exercise that you have to undertake in order to meet the challenge of NEP 2020. If you call about the academic challenge, academic restructuring of higher education system, this has been suggested in the policy itself. What shall be the nature of the higher education that you are offering? What shall be the nature of the institutions under higher education that will exist in the country at large? You might be having the universities that are completely research intensive universities. You might be having completely teaching intensive universities. You might be having the universities that have multiple what you call the education system, multi-dimensional education. So we have to change the structure of the education and academics as well. Gone are the days when we would consider that syllabi of a particular course, of a particular program designed by the boards of the studies of the universities of particular courses and the programs, those courses will remain static for all the times to come. What is required, how best we are in a position to relate those courses and relate those programs to the contemporary market situations. Whether those courses, whether those programs that you are offering from your institutions do have greater deal of relevance in the light of the market requirements. That is something which is required to be undertaken in large activities to be undertaken by the institutions of higher education if they want to keep themselves relevant. This is also a fact that we find many of the foreign universities, foreign institutions landing into our area offering their own educational products. And obviously, when they offer their own educational products, those products might be qualitatively of better benchmarks. Whether we shall be in a position to sustain those benchmarks, our own indigenous system, our own indigenous institution shall be in a position to withstand the pressure, the challenge that you face on account of entry of the foreign players in the higher education system in the country. And therefore, we have to try to keep ourselves sustaining over the period of time and meeting the challenge that we are facing, not only from the players from within, but from out of the country as well. Therefore, you cannot now rely upon the courses, the programs that you have been offering in the institutions of higher learning over the past decades. You have to change, we have to change, higher education system has to change, and this change has to be in the light of the change that is actually taking place in the environment, educational environment which we find in the country. Therefore, revision of the courses, introduction of the new courses, and more so, introduction of multidisciplinary courses, which is very important in the light of the contemporary needs. When we say that the thrust of the policy NEP 2020 is to produce viable and valuable human beings from the institutions. We don't only need the scientists coming up having a knowledge in the particular area of specialization. One is supposed to have a little bit of knowledge about various other issues as well, like the societal issues, the political issues, the artistic issues, the economics issues. And therefore, we have to change the system of the higher education by offering the single specialistic education. We have to change it to multidisciplinary education. That a student who offers or who just takes up a particular branch of knowledge for study during a particular period of time in an institution, he should have a choice that if he just desires to take up any other program, any other course from any other branch of knowledge in order to just satisfy his own aspirations, he should have the liberty of doing that. He should have the choice to do that. And a student pursuing science course, pursuing engineering course, pursuing medical course, he should be given an opportunity to take up the course on social sciences, course on economics, course on liberal arts. That choice must be available with a student during the course of his study in an educational setting. And therefore, the purpose is you have to produce the valuable human beings. You don't only need doctors. You don't only need an engineer, which is an engineer from technical point of view. You need an engineer who has the little bit of knowledge about other areas that are connected to him in his social life, in his political life, in his life as a human being. Therefore, we don't only need the technical people from the institutions of higher education, we need the people who have the holistic approach towards the life, who have the holistic approach towards the society. Therefore, the multidisciplinarity of the courses is something which is very essential, that is to be taken care of when you are going to implement NEP 2020. And we are fortunate here in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, maybe in the Ladakh as well, that we have already taken our steps towards this direction. We already give this choice to the students in the universities, in the college education, that they can take up under choice-based credit system any of the course not necessarily pertaining to his own area of specialization. If a student pursuing BSc course, MSc course from the university setting, he is under the present circumstances also allowed to take up any of the course of his choice from any other branch of knowledge. That there we are proactive, and we have already done that here in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. As I told you, we have been very proactive in the matter of making the implementation of NEP 2020 possible. And the state government, the Department of Higher Education, has already taken certain initiatives, and more so particularly by constituting the task force for submitting the recommendations for implementation. You have the multiple dimensions of the education being taken care of by the institutions. What is very important is, for me, what is very important is that the university education system, university has to undergo a lot of changes. We have different kinds of programs being suggested by NEP 2020. Are we going to stick to that 2 years postgraduate program as we are presently doing? Or are we going to implement the new line of programs that have been suggested by the NEP 2020? We have 4 years graduate program, undergraduate program. You have 3 years undergraduate program. You have 5 years integrated undergraduate program leading even to the award of the postgraduate degrees. And you know that after you complete your postgraduate degree, the bridge course in the form of MPhil, it has been wiped out. One can directly go for postgraduate program. After postgraduate program, one can directly go for research degree leading to the award of the PhD. And therefore, in this case, certain changes are required to be undertaken by the universities. I have already suggested to Madam Director Colleges that they should take up this matter at the departmental level. I mean, the Department of Higher Education should take up the matter with the universities, that are they going to change the nature of the universities or not? Because you have the old universities here in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, like you have University of Kashmir, we have University of Jammu, or we have agricultural universities, two agricultural universities. Are they going to change their own approach towards the the line of action that is to be followed in terms of the university education? Are they going to convert their teaching intensive university into a research intensive university or not? That's very essential to be considered, because I feel personally that those of the institutions that are at least having 50 years of age or more than 50 years of age, they can think of converting their institution, teaching learning institution, into a research based and research incentive universities. Because you have under NEP 2020, you have separate research intensive universities, separate teaching intensive universities. Are we going to do that? Which is very essential. Because when you try to bring about the structural changes, what is importantly felt is that India lacks in terms of the research output. Indian university system lacks in terms of the output in the form of the research. It's a fact of the matter. Our universities have not been in a position to produce quality research, what is actually required at the international level, or what's actually in terms of the benchmarks as we find in other leading universities of the world. And therefore, trust is also on research. You have to create the structure for conducting the research in the universities and as also of the colleges. We believe that university's primary responsibility is to conduct the research. Is that research that we conduct in the university system, is that relevant to the contemporary requirements or not? That's very important. And therefore, I personally would suggest to Madam Yasmin ji that she must take up this issue and discuss this issue with the universities, whether they are going to lay more and more emphasis on the research activity in their universities and leave the teaching job to those of the universities or those of the colleges, which would be primarily teacher intensive colleges and teacher intensive universities. Probably we have reached a stage, our old universities have reached a stage wherein they can think of converting their teacher intensive universities into research intensive universities. It's a right time to take up this issue and to discuss this issue and come out with some kind of solution to this issue. Therefore, research has to be very significant, and we have to make much and more efforts towards this direction. Research is not exclusively the job, that is the job of the faculty who actually work in the university system. But in the colleges as well, you cannot absolve the faculty from conducting the research activities. Are we at the departmental level or at the institutional level in a position to create the infrastructure for conducting the research in the colleges? You have to create the infrastructure for conducting the research in the colleges. This is a fact of the situation that we don't find much of the infrastructure, whether it be the physical infrastructure or the human infrastructure available within the colleges system to conduct and pursue rigorous research activity in the institutions. And therefore, this is the responsibility of the colleges at the institutional level and the department at the departmental level holistically for the entire Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and as also the Union Territory of Ladakh to think about the measures, how best we can convert these colleges into research centers. College faculty, young college faculty is actually ready to pursue the research activities, but unfortunately, we have not been in a position to create that much of infrastructure within the institutions, whatever nature of infrastructure, we have not been in a position. And therefore, I would suggest to the Department of Higher Education, at least at the district level, we can have one full-fledged research center wherein the faculty from all the colleges that are actually operating from that particular district would come and conduct the research activities wherein basic facility for the purpose shall be made available by the department or at the institutional level at its own. And therefore, this policy change has to be taken at the higher educational institutional level insofar as college education is concerned. I would suggest to the university education, think about what are they going to do. Are they going to stick to the 2-year postgraduate program, 3-year undergraduate program, or they are bringing about the changes in the light of the changes that have been suggested by NEP 2020, which is very essential. We have to implement all those changes. So academic restructuring is something which is very essential insofar of making these educational institutions relevant to the environment, relevant to the society, and relevant to the challenge that are actually posed by the contemporary situations in the market. Your market actually aims at skill, finding out the skills, requisite skills among us, the students that we are actually churning out from these institutions. Therefore, skill development is something which is very essential under the contemporary situations. You need to develop and create a set of skills, whatever the skills. Those skills may be technical skills, those skills may be professional skills, maybe managerial skills, maybe literary skills. All those skills we need to develop into a student, which are actually something which are needed by the market situations and by the corporate organizations that operate in the market situations. Make the students whom we produce from our educational institutions relevant in the light of the requirements of the corporate organization. Therefore, we have to have a greater deal of collaboration with the corporate organizations, with the industry. Your educational system cannot now go without having interaction and collaboration with the corporate organizations. This is a reality. Let's be factual. Let's understand the realities. This is a reality that you need to have greater deal of cooperation, coordination, collaboration with the corporate organizations. Actually, while we design the course, while we design the program, at the time of the designing itself, we must take the assistance from the corporate organization, and therefore more and more people from industry must be incorporated in the boards of studies also, while actually they are discussing the introduction of a course, introduction of a program in the system. You cannot now be, as an academic, you cannot now remain unaffected by the things, changes that are actually taking place in the market situation. So academic restructuring, in the academic restructuring, you cannot go without the skill-based education. You cannot go without the multidisciplinary education. You have to keep into consideration that whenever a course or whenever a program is designed, that is designed on the basis of these two important facets of NEP 2020, that we have to introduce more and more skill-based programs. We have to introduce more and more multidisciplinary nature of programs from our educational institutions. See, you have in the country now, BVOC program is being pursued. In many of the colleges in the country, we find BVOC programs have been introduced. Maybe we take up some efforts towards this direction, that more and more BVOC programs are introduced in our educational setting, higher educational institutions by the university. And we find in some of the states of India now, for skill development of the students, they have actually given emphasis on development of community colleges. Unfortunately, we don't have any community college here in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Think about having some colleges in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir that shall meet the features of a community college, which will be primarily and exclusively responsible for imparting skill-based education. As some of the states have taken a lead towards this direction, I think time has reached that we must also think of having any of these colleges, that we can do it amongst the colleges that are existent in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, convert some of those colleges into community colleges, which will be purely and exclusively responsible for imparting the skills in the light of the requirements of the market amongst the students. So you can think about making these academic restructuring, and as also the accreditation, which is very important insofar as bringing about the qualitative reforms and qualitative changes in the system of higher education is concerned, that accreditation Why the specialistic institution like NAAC has to be a regular feature. And we are fortunate that with the efforts that have been put in by the Department of Higher Education, many of our eligible institutions have already gone about the accreditation at the hands of the NAAC. Those of the institutions that were eligible in terms of the norms which have been actually designed by NAAC for the purpose of assessment and accreditation, those of the institutions have come forward and they've already taken up this responsibility. They did not bother about the grades, but we are really, really thankful to those of the institutions who came forward for assessment and accreditation at the hands of the NAAC. And it has really, really created a quality environment in the system of higher education, especially in this union territory, as I realize and understand in this union territory, it has actually created an environment towards the qualitative improvement and qualitative enhancement in the institutions of higher learning. We find we would do many of the activities in the institutions, colleges, and the universities, and people would not keep the record of all those activities available within their institutions. And that was one of the features, one of perhaps the impediments that our institutions could not actually get much of the score at the hands of the NAAC because they did not have the records available. But now with this process now known to all stakeholders, people have started working towards that. We understand and realize that under the present circumstances, most of the institutions are, whatever they do, they keep a proper record of that readily available within their institutions, and therefore they don't face any kind of difficulty in submitting whatever the documents to the assessing bodies. And therefore, assessment at the hands of the NAAC has really, really played a very significant positive role towards bringing about the qualitative changes in the higher education institutions. What I would suggest to the department, I'm fortunate that we have a very dynamic director colleges available at the present moment of time. I would suggest, Madam, I would suggest to you that before actually institutions submit the required documents to the assessing body like NAAC, we must have a localized system within the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, though consisting of some prominent academics who would just monitor, mentor, guide and facilitate those institutions before those documents in the form of SSR or in the form of what the data you send to the assessing body for the purpose of assessment and accreditation. I would suggest let there be a state level agency which would be particularly concerning, and not domain shall be restricted only to the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, maybe Ladakh also, to just guide and mentor those institutions, facilitate those institutions while they submit the required documents to the assessing body for the purpose of assessment and accreditation. This is my suggestion. You can constitute some kind of body which would be consisting of the prominent academics responsible for the purpose of assisting those institutions before actually going for assessment and accreditation. This can be done. It's very simple task that dynamic director colleges can undertake under her leadership. And this NAAC assessment, definitely we find presently also many of those institutions who had forgotten about the NAAC, they have restarted their activity and they are now going for third or fourth cycle of accreditation at the hands of the NAAC. And therefore, this kind qualitative environment has actually come forward and has actually taken place in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. And courtesy NAAC and courtesy the special treatment the NAAC did with the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir by constituting some committee for the purpose, helping those institutions. Madam has been associated with mentoring the institutions previously also. She has been a facilitator to various institutions before actually submitting the documents to NAAC for the purpose of assessment. And then when we talk about the restructuring, you have to restructure your institutions in the light of the human beings, human restructuring. human restructuring is very essential. When we make the what you call the manpower planning, what is the manpower actually required by the institutions to discharge their responsibilities effectively? Responsibilities can be discharged. It can be discharged not necessarily on effective basis. But if you want that your responsibilities should be discharged effectively, you have to make a proper manpower planning. Realizing, understanding the number of the human force, number of the faculty members required for meeting the demands of the students in a particular program or in a particular course. That manpower planning activity we have been doing in the past also, but not on scientific terms. Manpower planning is a vast subject wherein each activity of the program, each activity of a course, and each activity of the institution is actually ascertained, and the right number of people are assigned to discharge that, the area of activity. Therefore, when you start doing this manpower planning on the basis of the activities assigned to the institutions, that would be aimed at finding out the appropriate number of faculty members and other staff for discharging the responsibilities of that institution in an effective manner. And when you make this understanding of the ideal number of the human resource to be made available for those institutions, then what is the manpower presently available in the institutions? What is the present availability of the manpower in compared to or in comparison to the ideal number of the manpower? You can just lay down the benchmarks. We can lay down the benchmarks. That laying down of benchmarks that we had in the past, that if you have 300 students in a particular program, you need one faculty member, you have to revisit that benchmark. Revisit that benchmark on the basis of the requirements of the institutions and requirements of the student. And then when ideal number of uh, human force required for discharging the responsibilities ascertained, we can have a look at the availability of the human force, availability of the human force presently in the institutions, and deficit or surplus can be ascertained easily. And that restructuring of human force is highly essential, which is actually leading to the qualitative and effective discharge of the responsibilities of the institutions. So your academic restructuring on the basis of development of the skills, your premise has to be that your education is skill-based education. Your premise has to be that it has to be multidisciplinary education. These two premises you have to keep into consideration in order to make sure that you actually restructure the academics of the institutions of higher learning in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So these would be some of my the haphazard ideas about the subject. Maybe we have now the second speaker for this program in the form of Dynamic Director Colleges, Professor Yasmin Ashai. Maybe she is now going to talk about various other dimensions that are associated with NEP 2020 and how best are we prepared, how best we are taking up the efforts to implement the provisions of the NEP 2020 in the system of higher education in the times to come. With these words, I shall remain available on this for any kind of discussion and any kind of query that shall be raised by the participants. Now let's first listen from Professor Yasmin Ashai. I would request Dr. Sham to just introduce the next speaker and request her to share her ideas about the subject. Thank you.
Dr. Shyam, are you available? Okay. Thank you, sir, for your inaugural address, which you have delivered today in this particular national education policy related webinar for the Union and Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. You have highlighted many important points which are very relevant, specifically the skill-based education and the academic restructuring requirement, which is needed for all higher education institutions of the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. You have highlighted the various task force related activities which you are undertaking, and you are the part of the Union Territory task force. Those initiatives also you have highlighted. I hope the stakeholders and the HEI participants would have been benefited by the discussions on the deliberations given by Professor Jahur Ahmed ji. And without delaying further, thank you very much once again on behalf of NICET. I would invite Professor Yasmin Ashai for delivering the keynote address. Before inviting her, let me read out her CV. Professor Yasmin Ashai is basically belonging to the discipline of human development, and she is holding a charge of Director Collegiate Education, Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory. And she is having an experience of 26 years in the teaching and the administrative experience of holding the important positions of the principal of three different institutions, and she is the recipient of many important awards like gold medal for standing the first position in the higher education, and also awarded the Master of Karamchand Best Teacher Award. And she has participated in many conferences and has a credit of many publications in the area of human development, and her CV is quite long, so I would not waste any time, and will straight away invite her for delivering the keynote address. Madam Yasmin, you are requested to speak about the theme of the National Education Policy and the initiative with Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory is taking out for the implementation aspect. Thank you, madam. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vinita, for introducing me. Well, I did not share my CV, so probably you've taken it from somewhere. I've put in more than 35 years now in the Department of Higher Education. I'm a teacher, and at the very outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the entire team of NAAC for having me invited as a panelist. There were some, I have to tell my very respected colleague, Professor Zahur Saad, who's a very learned speaker. I'm very humbled by the very kind words he spoke about me. But I also have to tell him that I was listening to his conversation with Dr. Sham from 1120 and requesting the NAC team to, allow me to shift from an attendee to the panelist. Probably there was some kind of a technical hitch, but anyway, so Professor Zahur Saad, I was on time. I was listening to your conversation from 1120. Well, I would like to respond to, I would want to start my presentation on the National Education Policy 2020 and with special reforms on higher education. But I think I would, looking at the first slide, I would share my screen. I would next talk about the initiatives which have been taken by the UT of J&K. So I'm sharing the screen with the participants. Dr. Vinita, do we have that option of sharing the screen?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. It is there, ma'am. Ma'am, after mute start video, then there is a share option. You call technical team to make madam present. This option is visible.
You have to unmute, madam. Your voice is
Yes,
not
ma'am,
audible.
you are not audible.
Ma'am, now you can talk, ma'am. You have been unmuted.
That's your screen. Well, if you look at the aim of National Education Policy 2020, we understand that it facilitates, it's an inclusive, participatory and holistic approach, which has taken into consideration the field experiences, empirical research, stakeholder feedback, as well as lessons learned from best practices. It's a progressive shift from more scientific approach to education now, and the prescribed structure will help to cater the ability of the child, stages of cognitive development, as well as social and physical awareness. And if implemented in its true vision, the new structure can bring India at par with the leading countries of the world. Well, we all know that the aim of National Education on Policy 2020 is, major thrust areas is school education, higher education. There are other key areas of focus, but what is more important for us is to make it happen, as Professor Zahur Saad was talking about. I'm not going to talk about the evolution of the education policy. I'm sure all my learned speakers know it very well. If we just, just have a look at all the education commissions starting from 1948 till our NEP, came into being. And the kind of consultations we had across the country in order to bring this document into the public system. Now, I would just, take you through the slides and then we will hold a good discussion, because I don't want the dialogue to be, monotonous. I don't want to be a dialogue. I want it to be interactive, because I will be, as and when I pass through my slides, I'll be talking about the initiatives which have been taken by the UT of J&K vis-a-vis NEP 2020. Well, if we talk about the major reforms in higher education, we know that 50% GER by 2035, also 3.5 crore seats to be added in higher education. And we all know that the current GER is 26.3. So we have to move from 26.3 to 50%. As Professor Chart was talking about, holistic and multidisciplinary education. Along with that, there has to be flexibility of subjects. Well, we need to have multiple entry and exits, UG program either of 3 years or 4 years, a PG program either 1 year or 2 year, integrated 5 years bachelor's or master's, MPhil to be discontinued, and credit transfer and academic bank of credits. To facilitate the transfer of credits, that's very important. And I'll just talk about that. And what he was talking about is either you have research intensive universities or you have teaching intensive universities, and also you have autonomous degree granting colleges, which we will just, elaborate on how to do it, because that has to be done in a phased manner, in a graded manner over 15 years. The colleges have to be granted autonomy. And then, of course, multidisciplinary education and research university, that is MIRU, at par with IITs, IIMs, and IISCs. Well, first of all, I would like to talk about, after this, I would want to throw some kind of light on the major initiatives which have been taken by the Department of Higher Education vis-a-vis the UT of J&K. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the NAAC team, especially the NAAC team, a special task force kind of a team which has been constituted for the UT of J&K, which is helping all our colleges, hand-holding them, mentoring them in order to help them to fill in all documents, as Professor Chart was saying, right from IIQA. Because see, initially the colleges, NAAC is also like, connecting your ASH data and then collaborating it, whether you filled in your IIQA according to your ASH. So I think, Professor Chart, colleges need hand-holding right from the day when they start filling their ASH data for every current year. That is one. Two is then they fill the IIQA and then their SSR. And you're very right in saying that we have earlier also done, if you remember this exercise of mentoring and hand-holding colleges and helping them to fill in their SSRs. Recently, one of our college was accredited, assessed and accredited with grade C. They were very concerned and worried, but then the present principal was repeatedly saying that I have not filled the SSR, somebody, my predecessor has done it. So I think you're very right in saying that, our colleges need some kind of hand-holding in filling of the SSRs. Well, I would especially want to talk about the initiatives which we've taken. See, in the year 16, we started with our semester education, and 17, we started with our choice-based credit system. But I have to inform my August gathering, all my participants listening to me, that, the UT of J&K, I think probably is the only UT vis-a-vis state which has taken, specific and instant initiatives regarding NEP 2020. One is the constitution of the task force, which Professor Chart talked about. And it was not only constitution of the task force across colleges, across HED and universities, but it was specific tasks which were assigned to universities under the leadership of Honorable Vice Chancellors, and they were supposed to submit their documents immediately so that initiatives and steps could be taken up. That is one. Two, I have to inform you, when we are talking about credit transfer, that is why I'll collaborate our initiatives with the presentation which I'm making. You'll be happy to know that the Central University of Kashmir has, already initiated the credit transfer. They have built on a consortium of Himalayan region, and university students studying in Central University Kashmir will do their credits, maybe 6 credits, maybe 4 credits, maybe the entire semester in the Himalayan region. Central University is there. And then the academic bank we talk about, those credits will be transferred to the academic bank, and the transcript of the student will reflect the credits which the student has earned from, let's say, probably Gagwal University, or let's say probably a university in UP, that is in Lucknow, a central university. So a credit transfer already has started in the UT of J&K, which we talk about when we say there has to be a credit transfer and there'll be an academic bank of credits. See, one would like, it would be kind of a fantasy for us to think about in our country to transfer credits, which is usually done, in the Western world. Another initiative, although that is going to come later, but when we talk about research intensive and teaching intensive universities, I would want to inform my very learned predecessor that the Department of Higher Education has initiated the setting up of innovation, incubation, entrepreneurship cells in the colleges, and research cells, research units in the colleges under the hub and spoke model. So what you were referring to, that at the district level, we could have, but yes, that has already been done. So major colleges have been designated as hub colleges, and the other periphery colleges are spoke colleges. And in most of the colleges, we have already established a robust research ecosystem, which I understand is the need of the hour. So let me inform my gathering that, we have all realized that the researches which we carry out in the universities, we publish them, and then, we shelve them, and then they are not of any utility. So we've realized as teachers across the country, I'm sure, that this research needs to have some kind of social applicability. This is the need of the hour. I need to research on diabetes mellitus. I need to tell people what kind of diet you should be taken, because doctors do not tell them that. I understand that there is thyroid deficiency in the UT of J&K, so I do research on that. I understand that I need to research on various policy decisions which policymakers at the secretariat take, not taking into cognizance what happens at the grassroots level. So I need to see how many women beneficiaries are there who are getting benefit of social welfare schemes. So I need to research on that so that I can give my data tomorrow or my recommendation tomorrow to the Department of Social Welfare, UT of J&K, and tell them, by this is the data, so please look into this and frame your policy accordingly. So when we are talking about research universities or when we are talking about teaching intensive universities, we have already taken some steps regarding this. Also wanting to tell all my learned participants and my predecessor that the department, the UT of J&K has taken a very good step of having a common draft policy for all universities across the UT of J&K. So whether it is JU, it's KU, it's central universities are not governed by, they are governed by the union government, whether it is clustered university Srinagar, whether it's clustered university Jammu, all university, whether it is IUST, SMVDU at Jammu, Baba Ghulam Shah at Jammu, all private state universities will have a common draft defining right from the first clause, who's the registrar, the selection process for the VC, whether we need to have a pro vice chancellor, then the who's going to be the chancellor, and the entire curricular examination, all their syndic bodies, all details, all this is going to be a common thing for all universities so that our students get benefited across the UT of J&K. There is a common policy regarding their admission, common policy regarding curriculum reforms, regarding their admission process, regarding their examination process. Then we will also talk about in our next slides about skill, which Professor Sart said, and we all understand. See, earlier we used to think, in fact, today also we know that the main objective of education is wholesome development of our personality. Now, when we talk about wholesome development of our personality, we also would think that it's not important to link education to employment. But we also realize that, we are only producing unemployable graduates. We are not linking our courses with the market. Our courses are not in tune with the market. We are not making them market friendly. So when Saab student leaves the campus, either a college or the university, this student is not getting employment anywhere. Earlier also, there was too much of stress on vocationalization. If we remember, UGC would off and on, we had add-on courses, but those add-on courses did not have that kind of impact on our graduates to make them employable. So now NEP is stressing on vocationalization, on skill education. I have to inform my participants and my predecessor, Professor Chad, that the Department of Higher Education is introducing skill-based guidelines to all colleges and universities on two fronts. One is BVO courses, which he talked about. What is most important to me as a teacher in the collegiate sector is embedded skill courses. Now, BVO courses all are designed by, they are under NSQF, they are designed by NSDC, there are skill sector councils. So BVOC has a specific structure we talked about. It is like a certificate course, a diploma course, advanced diploma course, and a degree course. So they have a fixed structure. So, but when we talk about embedded skill courses, we all understand under our choice-based credit system, we have 16 credits which we devote or dedicate to skill-based education. But now the 4 credits have been given to, they have been designated to disaster management, which is a ruling of the court. So we are only left with 12 credits for our skill-based education. But the Department of Higher Education, with consultations with NSDC, have thought of a plan which says 12 credits to the student under 80-20 model, under different skill sector councils, with qualification packs, with academic packs, with your levels, because we start from level 4. We will on-job training, on-hand training with a mentoring institute, which will be either a knowledge partner or a training partner. So these 18 credits will be added to the 12 credits. So the 30 credit will be reflected on the transcript of the student, so that tomorrow when the student goes to the market, he has an edge over other graduates who have not done these 30 credits, specifically, let's say, in the hospitality sector, in the catering sector, in medical diagnostics, as a lab technician, or probably as a fashion technologist, as a food technologist, as a paramedic, as a horticulture, because we know that the UT of J&K, we are rich in our agriculture and horticulture, even our sericulture, even our, pisciculture, apiculture. So whatever kind of courses are designed by specific colleges, this student of ours, in specifically in the UT of J&K, will have an edge when he or she goes to the market and, goes with this kind of a certificate in hand, and this will help our student to become employable. The second thing which we would want to talk about, when we talk about major reforms in higher education, is the graded autonomy, which I talked about for our colleges. I have to tell my, participants that there are more than 150 totally government degree colleges in the UT of J&K. And then we have our private colleges, we have our, B.Ed colleges imparting teacher education. So these 150 degree colleges, we have almost 50 newly established colleges, and more than 70, more than 90 colleges were established earlier. So NEP talks about graded autonomy. What is now? You have academic autonomy, you have administrative autonomy, you have financial autonomy. Of course, you can't give it in one instance, because we will also talk about that colleges need to have their own governing bodies or own governing management. So this autonomy has to be phased out. So it has to be in 15 years. So slowly you are hand-holding the colleges and you're making them autonomous. So tomorrow they become degree awarding colleges. Then the national mission on mentoring. See, now we realize how important mentoring is at every stage. We are talking about even mentoring our colleges to submit their SSR. So we need to have mentoring institutions, and we need to have a common mission across when we are talking for the students of the entire country. Higher Education Commission of India, HECI, it will be set up under a single umbrella, and it will have 4 verticals under that. What are the 4 verticals? We will have National Higher Education Regulatory Council for regulating. It will be a regulatory body like. We will have General Election Council for standard setting. When we talk about LOCF, we will talk about that later also. Learning outcome based curriculum framework. We need to tune all our syllabi, our curriculum, and we need to see what is the outcome. What are we teaching our students? And we'll have, of course, like we had UGC, we'll have Higher Education Grants Council for funding. And of course, we'll have NAC, that is National Accreditation Council for accreditation. So this is another reform which is being thought of, that there will be HECI, Higher Education Commission, and it will work under 4 umbrellas. We will also have a common norm for private and public higher education institutions. And I have to tell you that a small step has already been taken in the UT of J&K when I talked about the common draft policy for all universities, and it will also follow a common draft for all higher education institutions across UT of J&K. And then, of course, public investment in the education sector to reach 6% of GDP at the earliest. Yes. Now, when we are focusing, we are talking about research, which I talked about in the UT of J&K. NEP says we need to have a national research foundation, which will research ecosystem across the country, or across the country, and then of course my own UT of J&K. Internationalization of education. See, right now all our students from this country also go in as as part of the student exchange program, or as part of faculty exchange program, or we get a fellowship to study abroad. But we need to raise our education to such a standard that their campuses with us in our country, and we raise the quality to such level that we are able to have a DU campus at Oxford. We have let's say Lady Irwin College campus at probably Harvard, and the university, similarly the universities, and then we also have IIT campuses, out campuses at different places. So we talk about internationalization. It might seem to be a distant dream, but I'm sure as a country, we will be able to do it very soon, because all our students who get fellowships and scholarships, when they go out to study, they do very well there. So we can always raise the level of our education so that we can internationalize our education. Then integration of vocational teacher and professional education. See, earlier we used to have a teacher education institute, a professional, but now we need to integrate them because we are talking about multidisciplinary education. Standalone higher education institutions, which we talked about, which will become multidisciplinary. Then we need to have National Education Technology Forum. And MHRD, which has already been done, is renamed as MOE. Some of the quality universities and colleges. Now, this policy envisions a complete overhaul and re-energizing of the higher education system to overcome these challenges and thereby deliver high quality education. Now, what is the vision of this policy which we talked about? We need to have large multidisciplinary universities and colleges with at least one in every district. Moving towards, we talked about institutional autonomy. Now, this is most important to me as a teacher. Revamping curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and student support. I think this needs our attention as teachers. We need to revamp our curriculum, which I talked about. We need to make it market friendly. We need to make it market oriented. We also need to change our method of teaching, the transaction which we make in the class. What kind of pedagogy do I use as a teacher in the class? It's not only teaching students on an flat panel and having, but then that's also very important, because we've realized with our COVID pandemic 19, we've realized that we need to have blended form of learning. My student may come to college in person teaching, because I cannot undermine the importance of a teacher. I'm a teacher myself. I understand how important it is for me to develop eye contact with my student and my teacher. Even my way of talking, even my attire can have some kind of an impact on my student. So that is the kind of impact, when we talked about guru in earlier times, the teacher has had on students. So I'll not undermine that importance. But then I will also look at our modern context where all our colleges, schools, universities were almost locked down for more than 1.5 years. So we need to have blended form of learning. We need to have online learning. So we need virtual labs. We need these interactive boards. We need to, tell our students that there are different kinds of, there are different sources. Now, teacher is not the only source of knowledge. It's not that earlier I was the teacher and I was spilling some kind of golden, pearls of wisdom or golden beans. No, it's not like that. There are many sources of knowledge. There is Professor Google. Just Google and you will get the entire information. So it's easy for a student. But then we don't want our students to be dependent on Google, but we need to provide them with other good sources of knowledge. So that is when we talk about changing our pedagogy. We need to change our assessment system, which most of us in the country have already done. Now we have continuous assessment. We grade students. We take into account their attendance, their assignments, their performance, their behavior, their conduct. And then we have term and examinations, which has also been changed. Now we no longer only depend on rote learning. It's not only subjective. We also have objective assessment. And of course, student support, which is very, very important. I was talking to one of my nephews who's just gone to Canada to study. I said, just tell me, because he studied from Amity, Delhi, which is also a very prestigious institution. Tell me what is the difference. I said, Auntie, I have to tell you that the kind of support system there is for students is just out of this world. He talked about the canteen or the eateries around the campus. He talked about the facilities in the library. He talked about student-related facilities. They give me so many hours. I can work and earn. There are counselors, there are mentors who keep calling me and talking to me. You come from India. What is your, do you have any kind of concern? Are you happy, or are you satisfied? And he said the kind of teaching. He said, Auntie, I can't tell you. We used to get our assignments in our country also. We have to make presentations, but this is one-to-one mentoring. They take my assignment seriously. I work for the entire night, present my assignment, present it, give a presentation. There is a huge hell of a difference between the kind of support students are given in those campuses compared to our, country. And yes, Another very important thing which we want to look at in our own country is the institutional leadership positions. See, usually what happens when I'm at the fag end of my career, I'm about to retire, I'm given a senior position. That is because I'm a senior professor. That's because of my experience. No, it's very important we look at our leaders early in life and we see if they have leader qualities. You know, we know that there are career progressions based on our teaching, research, and service, but at the same time, we need to see the potential which is in our leaders. It's not that I'm not interested, but just because I'm the senior most professor, I'm given the charge of in charge by vice chancellor or a director or a principal of a college. It's good to tap young people at a young age. You know, of course, they have must have put in 15 years. We talk about education, and then you promote them as principals or as leaders. That is very, very important, because unless and until we do not have very good leaders, we will not be able to talk about quality universities and quality colleges. Institutional restructuring, which Professor Sart was talking about, restructuring of our education, entire education system, and then consolidation. You know, he talked about these intensive universities, teaching intensive universities, research intensive universities, and multidisciplinary universities and colleges. And he was talking also about, but we do have clusters. I have to tell you that I think probably we were the first one, the UT, we were erstwhile state then, we were the only ones who started cluster university at Kashmir and cluster university at Jammu. 5 very prestigious colleges in the city of Srinagar and 5 very prestigious colleges in the city of Jammu were, made into a cluster, and cluster university Kashmir and cluster university Jammu were made collegiate universities. So they were made clusters. So because we wanted to also to decongest the existing universities. And there was also this concept of cluster universities under RUSA. So 2 cluster universities came into being. I'm not going to go into our old, that's very important, but we live with history. We have a very, when we look at our ancient Indian universities, when we talk about Takshashila, we talk about Nalanda, we are proud of our heritage and we all know it. So when we talk about moving to multidisciplinary universities, we know we have thousands of students who, from India, they study in outside environments. There are modern universities. If you look at Ivy League University, we look at Stanford University, they only demonstrate the type of success that large multidisciplinary research universities can bring. So Professor Chart was talking about that we need to have different kind of universities. Well, we know that we need to increase our GER from 26.3 to 50%. We also need to, have other types of institutions like open distance learning, online programs, which will enhance more offerings and access and increase our GER. We also need to look at our sustainable development goals, which talk about education. Then I would want you to focus on more holistic education, which I think we've already talked about. We know now we have 4th industrial revolution. We talk about engineering colleges, and we need to have more humanities. Also, not undermining the importance of languages. We need to have focus on literature, music, philosophy, ideology. See, I, as a student of human development, feel that it's very important that, we also have traditional kinds of courses or language courses, because ultimately we want our students to become socially productive individuals. It's very important that we have to be abreast with the technological advancements. We understand that we need to have, we are focusing on artificial intelligence, we are focusing on machine learning, we are focusing on deep learning, but at the same time, we also don't need robot kind of, machines in our society. We also need to have people who are we talk about values. That is, NEP also talks about humane values. We need to have human beings with human heart, with like humane qualities. So we are also stressing on socially productive individuals, along with, of course, keeping ourselves abreast with modern technological advancements, because we can't do without that. I think I'm skipping some of the slides. I would want. We did talk about internationalization of our education. We want to make our country a global destination. I would want to focus on student participation, which I already said, because we realize that students are the prime stakeholders in our educational system. And, we need to have more student-related facilities, club sports, culture, arts, and community service for our students. And what is most important for me is to involve my students in the decision-making bodies, committees, and processes of the institution. See, I take my decisions when I think of student only as a student who comes to the college and studies. But if I involve my student in the teaching learning process, the policy making decision, I'm sure we will have a better kind of a coordinated system. Again, as a teacher, this is also most important to me. Motivated, energized, and capable faculty. So usually we see some kind of stagnation in our institutions. I'll talk about my UT, and I'm sure my predecessor will agree that, once we reach a stage of, let's say, a maturity stage in our careers, become an associate professor, would not first talk about women, I would talk about men only. Some kind of stagnation. We lose that kind of motivation and dedication. I don't know for whatever reasons. And then for my women, I understand that there are physical, structural, psychological barriers which they have to cross. They have to break that glass ceiling to take up managerial positions, leadership roles. But somehow the motivation level and the energy also goes down. So it's very important that we also think of incentivizing our faculty. We need to have awards for them, rewards, promotions, recognitions, and of course what I talked about, we need to have uh, young leaders so that they remain motivated and we have motivated faculty. Now, in order to do that, I've already said we need to incentivize, we need to have independent, transparent processes, we need to have faculty with high academic and service credentials, and of course, through leadership positions, we need to promote them from time to time. And of course, then I've already said, when we talk about higher education institutions, we also need to put in place comfort for them. Vis-a-vis, we need to have modern digital enabled classrooms, of course, clean drinking water, toilets, offices, teaching supplies, labs, pleasant classroom spaces, and modern technology, education. Yes, equity and inclusion in higher education is because we know that we already have a rural divide. We've added a digital divide. So we understand that we have people belonging to socially, economically weaker backgrounds. We have disadvantaged groups. And when we are talking of increasing our GER, we need to, think about opportunities for them. We need to have scholarship programs, fellowship programs for them. Technology, I also have to tell you that there is also a proposal in the pipeline in the UT of JNK where the government is thinking of providing tabs to the entire first semester students every year. This scheme is in the pipeline. So every student who enters the college system will get a tab free of cost for rest of his life. Even if he leaves the college, yes, probably maybe then we'll have to take it back from him. But then it will be for the entire, let's say if we are admitting 150,000 students every year to the first semester of our colleges, so every year we'll give 150,000 tabs to our students. So one, measure of removing the digital divide, which we talked about, and which came more to the surface because of COVID-19 pandemic, when we shifted our entire in-person teaching to online teaching, and most of the students would come to the college have Android smartphones. So how are we going to submit our assignments? How are we going to interact with our teachers? They might attend the lecture if it's given through a WhatsApp or an audio or a video recorded thing, but then they had this, concern about their assessment. So this is one of the way, like, thinking of removing the digital divide. I'm not talking about teacher education, which is also very important, imagining vocational education, which we've already talked about. But I think I would straight away move to effective governance, because we talked about the graded autonomy to be given to the institutions. So I already said we need to have board of governors, and they need to have an IDP, that is an institutional development plan, in order to progress. Okay. We've talked about transforming our regulatory systems. We talked about our various bodies, the Education Council, which is going to work under 4 umbrellas. So not focusing on that, but yes, I would want to talk about the implementation. See, because I already said the NEP document, the NEP 2020 document is a very well documented, it's a visionary document which has been prepared after vigorous exercises of involving entire stakeholders, having so many deliberations. But what is most important for us now is the implementation part, which we've been talking about off and on, which Professor Zart also talked about. And I also vis-a-vis told you what kind of initiatives have been taken in the UT of J&K. But implementation, we understand that any policy is as good. Policy is in our hand, it's in place. So we think that, it's half implemented. But actually, let me tell you, this NEP 2020 requires rigorous kind of implementation. Multiple initiatives and actions will have to be taken by multiple bodies in a synchronized and systematic manner. It has to be a very well coordinated, well collaborated affair. All departments, all various bodies, all organizations will have to work together, which will involve, when we talk about higher education, our Ministry of Education, our RSA, our union state governments, our ministries at the state level, or advisors like we have right now in our UT, our state departments, our boards, our regulatory bodies of school and higher education, NCRT, SCERT, schools, and all higher education institutions, along with a timeline. See, because we are already thinking of implementing it in 2022. So we have very little time. We are already preparing, but we have little time to think of, okay, we'll do this, but we have to implement it in spirit and intent. And of course, I'm telling you that through coherence, that needs a lot of planning at the institutional level, at the university level, at the ministry level, state ministers, at the Department of Education, and of course, at the country level. We have to have a complete synergized plan. Otherwise, I'm sure we will not be able to implement it in its right spirit. I would also like, before I conclude, I would also want to focus on, I've already told you the kind of initiatives which we've taken as, part of the Department of Higher Education in the UT of J&K. But at the same time, what is most important to me as a teacher, I think also when Professor Chart, he also speaks, I have loved his discourses and deliberations, and he speaks with his heart, of course, utilizing his entire, faculties, cognitive faculties also. But I think he is very right, and it's very important also to think from the heart and think of what is possible at the ground level. See, we do talk about, but it's very important that we also idealize things. We have a vision. Now you have a short-term vision, you have a long-term vision, you have short-term objectives, you have long-term objectives. We know that we're going to work in phases. We also drive our life, our entire life through our phases, through various stages of development. But I think as a teacher, what is most important to me is to think, number one, the benefit of NEP 2020, which goes directly to my student. When I talk about the multidisciplinary courses, when I talk about transfer credit, when I talk about academic banks, it took me a lot of time to get into this. What is the academic bank? How is it going to work? How is it going to materialize? But then we saw it being implemented by, the Central University of Kashmir when they entered into an MOU with the consortium of Himalayan region, and they thought of transfer credit from Central University of Kashmir to other universities. So I'm sure our state universities, KU, JU, and other
Ma'am?
I'm talking about. So second thing I gave you this reference in order to tell you how important it is to introduce vocational education and skill-based education so that my student tomorrow becomes employable once he or she leaves the collegiate or the university sector. This is most important in whatever way he wants to do. He wants to start his very small unit, a small enterprise, get into higher education, get into a government sector, get into an organized sector, get into an unorganized sector. We are very rich. We are an agriculture state. We are very rich in horticulture, and we are famous for producing different kinds of fruits, whether it is wet fruit or dry fruit. So, like we also have that industry, and our young youth can also get into that kind of sector. They can start their own enterprises, which we've recently started thinking of. That no, government jobs is not the only option. Earlier we had this in mind, but now it's very important that we sharpen the skills of our students. We hone their skills so that tomorrow they become employable in the market. So one, I've talked about what is dear to me is my multidisciplinary and credit transfer. Two is the skill education being imparted to students, which is very dear to me as a teacher. And three, what is most important to me is my energized, motivated faculty. Unless and until we don't have, we are all very capable, we all pursue our higher education, I do my postdoc, and suddenly when I come to the higher education sector, not lose because I'll have the same kind of potential. So probably incentivization, probably giving me more facilities, probably recognizing me, giving me a leadership role very early in life. Yes, of course, depending upon my capability, will also help, stop this kind of a brain drain is when we leave. But at this, I call this also brain drain because suddenly I start getting stagnant here, and I feel that it's no important now to be as motivated and dedicated I was when I was an assistant professor and I was progressing through CAS. So suddenly I don't know what happens to me as a teacher. I lose that kind of dedication. So we definitely need to do about something about that. And then of course, last but not the least, the student-related facilities which are to be created in the higher education institutions across the country so that our students also enjoy the same kind of ambience, the same kind of environment in our higher education institutions as they enjoy when they leave the country and either go to the US or to Canada, now New Zealand, Australia, Germany. These are now, they become hub, spots for Germany is for technical education, or London for law, other places, European countries. So my student should enjoy the same kind of facilities in my own country. We also want to be rooted, grounded to our own country, to our thought of nationalism. And so we want our students to stay back. Of course, they can do very well for themselves, study wherever they want to, come back to their own place to serve. That is what we've been seeing now. I mean, probably there's a trend that, people want to get back to their own regions or to their own states. So this is like, out of NEP, these things are very, very important to me. And of course, I do not want to undermine the importance of research, but research which has social applicability, which is applicable, which is going to help my common people, which I do not want to publish into books, into papers. Of course, that has its own impact, but I want to make it very, very simple. I want to make it applicable to my people who are outside the campus of this college or Kashmir University or Jammu University, my farmers, cost, my farmers who are going to benefit, who know when to do what, and how to have a very good harvest and to reap a good harvest. So research, of course, which will have a very good impact on, of course, the literary fields, and at the same time, research which has social applicability. I would end with this. Thank you very much for being so patient. Extremely thankful to my predecessor, Professor Zahur Saad, who's always been there. I could see him, looking at me and trying to see what I'm sure he is a much learned speaker, and he's talked much in detail and deliberated, and I'm sure he is much more understanding than me on NEP. But I have made very little efforts to understand NEP and to see what is applicable on the ground, and as a what can I do, and as part of the department, what is my role and where can I play my role. Thank you very much. Again, thank you to the entire team of NAAC. Extremely thankful. God bless us all.
Thank you, Dr. Yasmin. I think it is your, you have to unshare your slides. With all the discussions and the speech given by Director Higher Education from the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, we are thankful for Dr. Yasmin for sparing the initiatives taken up by the department, and also highlighting the important aspects of NEP which are there, and how the plan has been made to implement the policy, and to take it to the students level, to take it to the teachers level. All those aspects are covered by her. We are very thankful to Dr. Yasmin for sparing time out there and sharing the details of the initiative. Now we have already exceeded actually 11 minutes, so we can take some questions if the audience want to take ask some questions from the panelist. Pusha, if you can enable the participants for asking 1 or 2 questions, we can take out.
Yes, ma'am. I request the participant to raise their hand if they have any questions. Dr. Ahmad Bhatt, you may ask your question.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My question is to Professor Dr. Yasmin Ashai ma'am, and also to our former director Professor Zohar Ahmed Chat साहब. जस्ट मैम अभी बात कर रही थी कि रिसर्च इकोसिस्टम की बात जो हो रही थी, या रिसर्च स्किल सेल्स जो हम कॉलेजेस में या यूनिवर्सिटीज में हम अडैप्ट करने वाले, बट फॉर दैट वी नीड रिसर्चर्स मैम. And if we look at our college system, we don't have enough faculty who are PhD who can do research. जैसे जहां तक मैं जानता हूं, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ मास्टर्स विथ रिसर्च नहीं हो पा रहा, तो हम मास्टर्स में ज्यादा रिसर्च तो सीख नहीं पाते, तो वही लर्न अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ रिसर्च इन अवर PhD प्रोग्राम्स, बट स्टिल वी डोंट हैव PhDs इन अवर कॉलेजेस, फैकल्टीज, एनएफ फैकल्टी. जो हमारी मैक्सिमम फैकल्टी 2016 के बाद आई, वो ज्यादातर लोग PhD नहीं है, सिंपल नेट है. तो मैं भी उनमें से एक हूँ, लेकिन जहां तक बात परमिशन की है पीएचडी करने के लिए, या जो लोग पहले पीएचडी कर रहे थे, तो मैम उसके बारे में मैं क्वेश्चन ये मतलब मैम समझ गई, मैम थोड़ा सा हंस रही, तो मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि हमें रिसर्चर चाहिए इस इकोसिस्टम को क्रिएट करने के लिए, तो क्या हमें परमिशन मिलेगी इस चीज के लिए या नहीं?
Can I answer this question?
जी जी मैम।
आरूफ साहब, मैं आज की डेट में आपको ये बोलना चाहती हूँ कि हमने 300 केसेस रेकमेंड किए हैं डिपार्टमेंट को फॉर पार्ट टाइम पीएचडी। दैट इज नंबर 1। नंबर 2, मैं आपको ये बोलूंगी कि आपका डेटा थोड़ा बहुत सही है, थोड़ा बहुत सही नहीं है, कि हमारे मैक्सिमम कॉलेजेस में इस वक्त जो फैकल्टी है वो सब परस्यू कर रहे हैं पार्ट टाइम पीएचडी। नंबर तीसरी बात है, 2016 के बाद का डेटा अगर आप देखोगे, यू वेरी राइट, नेट तो था ही, नेट भी एक एलिजिबिलिटी है, लेकिन जिन लोगों ने एंट्री लेवल पे जो पीएचडी नहीं है, लेकिन आज वो आप 4 साल के बाद सारे रजिस्टर कर रहे हैं for part-time PhD. So I agree with you, because we do not have an integrated master and a research program. But after pursuing masters, that you are very right, masters में तो thesis का project work at the most 100 to 200 marks का होता है, जहां बच्चे को candidate student को exposure मिलता है to get into, to inculcate that kind of research, system in your mind and get it into your psyche. But at the same time, let me tell you that the Department of Higher Education has, with your affiliated universities, that is Jammu University, Kashmir University, Cluster University Srinagar or Cluster University Jammu, are also thinking of starting individual PhD programs. And colleges mein wo ecosystem banaya ja raha hai. One is, I told you, that you start conducting research on small projects, make it socially applicable. 2 is, you become a PhD awarding research center. So all these proposals are in the pipeline, and inshallah you will see that they will soon see the light of the day.
Thank you very much ma'am. Thank you.
Usha, any other participant?
I couldn't see any other participant raise their hand, ma'am. I request the participant if they have any question.
Ma'am, if you allow me, I would also like to ask Professor Dr. Yasmin Ashai, ma'am. It is recording, ma'am. I am from Government Degree College, Wailul, Arogi. Ma'am, this college has been established in 2011, but still we are being operated from a rented building. Although we have taken our land from the Government of India, but can we submit our IIQ or NAAC?
This question is pertaining to NAAC's eligibility, which states that I would like to respond on behalf of NAAC. Actually, eligibility criteria for applying for assessment and accreditation states that the institution should complete at least 6 years of existence or 2 batches pass out of degree programs. So that is the eligibility criteria. And if the institution is satisfying these 2 conditions, apart from some other norms, small deviations are there that off campuses, if they are having, that should be recognized by UGC, like that. There are certain additional clauses, but a rented and permanent building is not a part of eligibility criteria, so you can apply for assessment and accreditation.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Dr. Vinita, I think probably could not hear what he asked, but I think you gave him the answer. Yes, that is very true. Every college needs to have 2F and 12B, recognition by UGC under 1956. And yes, you very rightly said 6 years and 2 batches. So everybody knows that. Actually, I'll tell you, because some of our colleges have this kind of apprehension that if we are in a rented building, what is going to happen? We are not going to get a good grade. So we are also working on that. We are working on that. But if a college, we are letting them stay in the rented accommodation and shift into the permanent campus. But in the meantime, we have requested the concerned principals to prepare their IIQAs at their own level, not submit them, and also get into preparation of SSR.
Thank you, madam. I would like to introduce myself again because you joined late. And Dr. Pratibha Singh, working as Deputy Advisor in Delhi office of NAAC. And Dr. Vinita has already.
I've been calling you Dr. Vinita.
Yes, yes. Okay. So can we have next question?
Any questions are there?
Ma'am, I couldn't see any. 1 second. Ma'am, I couldn't see any hand raised, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So I think participants have understood very well the concept of NEP because we had two eminent speakers with us, Madam Yasmin and Professor Jahoor sir. So we thank you one and all for being with us. And for formal vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Pratibha Singh ma'am to please propose the formal vote of thanks and thanks to our eminent guest with us, Pratibha ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vinita. So this program has come to an end in which we have listened to the chief guest and the guest of honor of today's program, Professor Yasmin and Professor Zahoor Ahmed Saab. Basically this Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is having a different higher education profile altogether, wherein we have different kinds of institutional profiles are different from the other parts of the country. So it becomes very important that we discuss the implementation aspects, wherein all the states have already been initiated and the progress has been highlighted by eminent speakers out there. So I'm sure that all the stakeholders will be benefited, and as already highlighted that NAAC will be very important for all these initiatives to be, because this is forming a benchmark wherein all the policies will be linked to the grades by the quality assurance agency. So hopefully we will be able to work out together in this direction. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give a formal vote of thanks on behalf of NAAC. So in this initiative, I would like to first thank our Honorable Director, Professor S.C. Sharmaji, for motivating us to undertake this activity with full enthusiasm. I would like to thank entire Northern Region team comprising of Dr. Jagannath Patil, Dr. Vinita Sahu, Dr. Shyam Singh Linda, and myself. And then I would like to thank the entire ICT team and Ms. Pushya for supporting this activity technically. Last but not the least, the participants who have been interacting and listening to the deliberations of the today's program. Thank you one and all. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am. So once again, we thank you, our eminent speaker. And this program is the last program in this series for Northern Region. We hope in future we would be having many upcoming programs, and we would definitely like to invite the experts like you for upcoming programs. So with this, I wholeheartedly thank the participant because we have got a huge number of participants for all the programs pertaining to Northern Region. So special thanks to all the attendees who have been part of the whole Northern Region series program. And we hope that in future also we'll be getting a cooperation from their side. So with this, we would like to thank everybody and we would like to close the program. I request Pushya Lakshmi to please close the program. Dhanyavad, Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Vinita. Thank you, Dr. Pratibha. I love you as much as I love Vinita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Closing the session.
Yeah.